You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Hello and welcome back to another journey into the Ecto Portal. The spasm of mysterious, the realm of the unknown, the ectoplasmic playground of the netherworld. I could go on all night. Welcome back, folks. Tonight's show is, of course, The Curse of King Tut.
King Tut.
Did you guys play? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've been reading Howard Carter's book about unearthing the tomb and the care that he took step by step.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to learn what archaeology was back over 100 years ago now.
Right.
And what he had to do to correct the mistakes of archaeologists before him. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. I can talk about the savagery that was used early in Egypt's history with archaeologists in the 1800s and then the 1900s, of course.
I believe it.
But first, we're going to talk. We have a special guest.
Yep.
Let's introduce our special guest first. Do you want to go ahead and let him talk?
I don't know.
I think we will.
I think
we'll let
we
him
will.
talk.
Let him talk.
Oh, I'm not feeling that special because I don't have my own mic. I have to share. But I'm David
Well, you'll
Johansen.
have your own mic soon now.
It's our darling friend David Johansen.
Yes, he's here to
He's
join us
live in the
tonight.
studio, and he'll be with us in a couple of weeks.
He's risen from his tomb just for the show.
Absolutely.
And he's brought all the right beverages with him.
He did. We have chocolate cake.
Oh, yeah,
white
we have that.
wine,
We
red
got wine, water,
cough
and
drops.
We have
and
everything
Propel.
supplied. Look,
Except a fork.
Oh, a fork. You
So he's been eating with his
you're
hands.
gonna have to eat with
savage.
you're gonna have to
You
take
can
a
use a
slice
pen,
and eat with your
but
hands.
I-
We
yeah.
have knives back there.
And this
so
is
you'll have to
this
slice
is a
it for you.
teetotaler too. You should see him on Facebook
Oh,
with his
yeah.
fancy
Oh my God.
cats and teetotaling.
That's true. We'll do a whole show about
He brought
that.
his
Oh,
teetotaling
yeah.
here.
The proper way to drink and serve tea.
Absolutely.
Of course, tonight's topic is the curse of King Tut. Everyone was
King
obsessed
Tut.
with King Tut, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
everybody loves King Tut.
Now, I remember how exciting it was in the 70s when they toured the King Tut exhibit for the first
I saw it at
time.
the DM Museum.
I didn't
I
get
would
to
have
see
loved
it.
to see it.
I was told I had to stay home.
Aww.
Oh, that's sad.
I know, it was sad. I still have never seen King Tut's treasure.
Really?
I've seen the King Tut tour, and I've seen the knockoffs from the King Tut tour, where they
I
find
heard-
stuff and they kind of abscond with it to
Didn't
different
those
tours.
tour malls later on, the knockoffs?
They did.
Okay, see?
Now, did you folks see the video I put on the page where they did modern technology to find out what he really looked like and what he might have died of and what his did you see
Yeah,
the-
he looked kind of scary.
he had a club foot, and I believe that he walked with the cane, and
He kind of
Yeah.
had the duh.
and he
That's
yeah.
interesting because he was so young.
Well,
He was
when
very
died.
young.
only
Yeah, he
18.
was very young.
They
Yeah.
speculate he died of an infection in his leg.
Yeah.
Supposedly, they say he died of infection. Some people still dispute that he was assassinated, that he was clubbed over in the head because they was noticing
Right, the damage on the skull.
damage on the skull.
Skull, yeah.
What's interesting, though, I'm going to go backwards in time, 100 years before King Tut was discovered. Let's go back in our machine.
Our time machine.
All right, so this is back when all of the Valley of the Kings had been untouched. No tombs had been found. None of the temples, none of Nubia's temples or shrines or palaces had been discovered, and their tombs of their priests and priestesses. An Italian man named Giovanni, I think that's his name. He was a circusman who was traveling England. It was failed in a circus. They had a good circus act, but nobody wanted to see it. So he said, you know what? I'm done doing this. We need to go somewhere where people will appreciate us. He took his wife, moved to Cairo, and he decided he met this Englishman while he was there who was dressed in Muslim outfit. He said, I'd blend in better with the locals. And he said, but I have a job for you. I want you to pick up this giant idol head, this stone granite head I found along the Nile. And he told him where it was, and he said, I want you to pick it up, put it on a barge, and bring it back to me so we can send it to the British Museum. And anything you collect, we're going to send it to the British Museum. You'll be famous. He's like, oh, I'll be famous. This is a great idea.
Money.
He went down the Nile with his wife. They found this giant granite head, and it weighed like 3 tons. And they're like, well, the Nile is 4 miles away. So we have to find a way to get this. And it was this giant temple it was next to. He's like, we got to find a way to get this head to the Nile to a boat. So they're all the Egyptian locals are laughing. You'll never get it there. No one will ever be able to move that thing. And you'll never find the men to do it. He finally did. He did the whole lay down logs and rolled it like they probably did when they built it. Got it all the way to the Nile. Went back to Cairo with it. The British man said, thank you. He was the British consulate. And he said, I'm going to send it back to the British Museum. Then him and his wife said, let's go explore a little more. They went down the Nile to Nubia, found this entire giant palace. It was Ramses the Great's palace.
Can you imagine how much stuff was untouched back then?
That's just it. He's like, look at this palace. He's like, well, there's no way we could ever find the men to do this. His wife's like, we'll find it. We'll find the men to dig this out. We'll be inside this tomb. You found this. This is the greatest achievement. And so they went back. They found other small items. This other rival Egyptologist, archaeologist from Italy, Druvetti, was putting his name on everything. And he was bribing the local townsmen to get licenses for areas that only he could do and cover. He owned everything. He put his name on. So this Italian guy's like, you know what? We're going to go after that Ramses the Great temple. And he got his men, went down there. They opened it up. Humongous. Empty. But it was the biggest Egyptian palace they've ever found, ever.
Oh, Ramses temple,
built into the mountain.
Is that the one, Luxor? Is that the Luxor one?
No,
this isn't Luxor.
This was in Nubia.
Oh, this is in Nubia. Okay, all right.
But then he went back. After he found that, they said, well, what are you going to do now? He said, I'm going to go to the Valley of the Kings. And they all laughed at him and said, that's in the middle of nowhere. No one's out there.
It's a desert.
Why would you bury a king in the middle of nowhere? He goes, that's why I'm going out there.
You think the name would actually hint to something?
Well, I don't think it was called the Valley of the Kings.
I don't think it was called the Valley of the Kings. It was the
I see.
Valley of something.
It was the Valley?
I'm applying modern knowledge.
A bunch of sand. Desert.
They go out. He goes out to the valley and he brings a few people, his wife and a few others, and they're like, "This is it. There's nothing here. Why are we following you? You're an idiot. There's nothing here." And his wife's like, every time he looks, he finds something. Like, yeah, but there's nothing here. It's desert. We're gonna die out here. And he said, "Well, this is my expedition. If you trust me, stick with me." And then he looked at on the side of the mountain in the valley, and he saw this indentation from water over the years that had eroded on the rock. And he said, that's a weak rock. Otherwise, that erosion wouldn't be going down the same rock. He said, I bet you there's a tomb underneath that. So they started digging at the base. They found Seti's tomb. The biggest tomb in the Valley of the Kings, also empty. Tomb robbers had stolen everything. There was a hole in the wall.
Of course.
But it was the most intact, beautiful tomb. And his alabaster sarcophagus was still there. But he wasn't there anymore. The mummy was gone. And all the treasures are gone. But he was now famous for having discovered the Valley of the Kings. And then, of course, in the ensuing century, this is where I was leading up to.
Yes.
Is other archaeologists came, like the Italian guy. They were using dynamite. They were blasting holes through these tomb entrances, destroying half of what was in there, pilfering them out, and taking off. And they were selling them to rich people. They weren't even... And turns out this... Giovanni, he was lied to. That British consulate was collecting all these artifacts and selling them on the private market. He wasn't even sending it to the British Museum. That's why he said, I'm becoming an archaeologist and getting my own stuff to the British Museum. And all of his stuff is in the British Museum today.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine how much stuff was in private collections now from that time that they never
Well,
gave
you know,
back?
when I was in England, you could still get like certain little private collections from antique. Like when I was in Portobello Road, you know, you can find some little unique Egyptian items that the British Museum does not have, or they were from private collectors.
Yeah.
You know, and old ones, very old.
Well, you know, something that was happening in the 10s and the 20s is people who had been collecting this stuff, and as the world economy was starting to suffer, they suddenly started selling all this stuff. And so many of these treasures are like all over the place and lost.
Especially in the Depression
And
era.
that's the problem. Fast forward 100 years to
Yeah.
Howard Carter, 1922. He discovers the tomb with Lord Carnarvon. He has a strange last name. He's an English nobleman, lots of money. They were there for 6 years, found nothing. He was digging all over the Valley of the Kings. Everyone laughed at him and said, "There's nothing left in this valley. You're stupid. You're wasting money." And he told this guy, "One more season, please, and if nothing's here, we're done." That's when they found the steps of King Tut's tomb. He actually found the steps, and of course, what he said he wanted to not do what other archaeologists had done before him was be destructive. He wanted to be restorative. Very careful, aware. He took photographs of everything before anyone got to touch it.
He was smart.
Every angle.
Yeah.
He actually had a photographer come in from the Met in New York. He had a preservationist come in from Cairo. So this first person took pictures, and they developed them in the tomb next door. It was another emptied out tomb from another pharaoh. So he developed the pictures there, and then after they cataloged them all, then they had someone come in, gently pick up stuff. But what was so cool, the restorative part is there was a pair of beaded slippers from King Tut. And they were, the thread had rotted away. If you moved it, poof. You have a pile
That was
of
done.
beads.
Right.
This was so ingenious.
Deteriorated,
He
yeah.
poured wax over the entire object. And then they got the object back to the other tomb, and they rethreaded the beads exactly how it was laid.
Wow.
And by the time he got done and they tied it tightly, they could rinse off the wax, and the whole slippers were still intact.
Wow.
Amazing.
So this is the kind
wow.
of care that he took.
He really
with
thought this
everything.
out carefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took him, 6 months to just do the first room with all the treasures.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was like a year before they got into the burial chamber.
Yeah.
And that's when Lord Carnarvon, his benefactor, got bit by a mosquito.
Mosquito, yeah.
And he nicked it while he was shaving, and he got a fever, and he died shortly after. And they kind of pissed the press off, and they only promised the London Times this exclusive stories about unearthing the tomb. So all these other press were around, but they didn't have access.
No.
They could only take pictures as they were removing stuff. So that's where they're starting to wonder, the curse of the King Tut's tomb, did it start because of these press who were angry because they couldn't get in, so they had to write something? Do we make it up? Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in the day thought, no, it was an actual curse. And I know, Verna, you've just found a actual curse, correct?
Well,
Egyptian curse?
I went ahead and I looked at the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and they have over 200 spells to protect the dead, and they have curses in there as well to help protect the dead. And this one here is not exactly a curse, but it's protection. It's number 31, to stop the dead being harmed by crocodiles in the afterlife.
But this would be like something that if someone was entering a tomb, they would see.
Right. It's just, or if they're on their journey and they're being harmed and they're being after, I don't know how a real crocodile could hurt the dead, but they thought they could. So
There's something about crocodiles that were very spiritual in the afterworld.
right, they're very spiritual. Right.
Because
so,
in the afterworld, Verna, I just wanted to say something. It's
Sure.
like when you die, you are met with Mot. Mot, who is the goddess of truth.
Right.
And she carries a feather and a heart.
Right.
And she takes the pharaoh's heart and puts it on a scale, and takes the feather and puts it on a scale. So if if the heart is light as a feather, you have your passageway to go
Right.
to
And of course,
happily
right.
ever after. But if
Right.
you didn't, a lot of them believed that they would take your body and they would throw it in the crocodiles, and that's how
Right,
you
and of
face your
course,
death.
it wouldn't be a real crocodile. It would just be like the spiritual crocodile, the spiritual form of the crocodile, and it was probably like an astral, like the astral form of it. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead and let her
so
read.
It's like their hell.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and read this. It says, "Get back, retreat, get back, you dangerous one. Do not come against me. Do not live by my magic. May I not have to tell this name of yours to the great God who sent you? Messenger is the name of one, and Bedi and Bed-T is the name of the other. The crocodile speaks. Your face belongs to righteousness. The sky encloses the stars. Magic encloses its settlements. And my mouth encloses the magic which is in it. My teeth are a knife. My tusks are the viper mountain." The deceased replied, "O you with a spine, who would work your mouth against this magic of mine, no crocodile which lives by magic shall take it away."
Wow.
And it seems the curse to many locals, and especially the workmen, was real. And I guess the first day that he discovered the entrance of the tomb in his oops, hold on just a sec here. In his room, Carter, I guess he has a canary. It was like a pet for everyone in the tomb. You know, like the old canary in the coal mine they were using in the tomb.
Because of the oxygen.
I guess there was a cobra loose in his house, and it ate his canary.
Oh, man.
And one of the workmen ran
hate
back
when
and
that
said,
happens.
"Mr. And he goes, Mr. Carter, the cobra ate your canary. It's bad omen. Get out of the tomb. We can't go any further." And he said, "No, it's superstition."
Right.
But he did get, let's see. I know he got some letters too. A rash of letters warning him not to proceed. An archaeologist dismissed it as nonsense. April 5th, 1923. I wasn't entirely sure how he died, but because of the mosquito bite and nicked it, like we said, he died after he nicked it from shaving. More details emerged around that death. The night of his death, there was a blackout in Cairo, and reportedly his dog back in England let out a howl and dropped dead at the same moment that he died.
Oh, wow. Oh,
The dog
wow.
probably sensed his ghost.
Could be. Press around the world became obsessed with the idea that he was killed by a pharaoh's curse. Los Angeles Times wrote, "No matter how little superstitious a man may be, the act of breaking the rest of a carefully guarded through the centuries must cause an emotion which time can never efface." More deaths followed. A few weeks later, Carter gave wealthy financier George Gould a private tour. Soon after, Gould came down with the fever and died. Other early tomb visitors died of strange deaths within a year. Prince Kamal Fame Bey and South African millionaire Wolf Joel were both murdered, and British MP Aubrey Herbert went blind and died of blood poisoning. The Curse of King Tut. That's tonight's topic of conversation and intellect. Now, remember when I mentioned Aubrey Herbert went blind and died of blood poisoning? He was the half-brother of Lord Carnarvon, who funded Tut's excavation. The one that died of the mosquito bite?
Yep.
That was his half-brother. And when Aubrey actually entered the tomb, he was quoted as saying, "Something dreadful is going to happen to our family." And then he died of blood poisoning right after Lord Carnarvon then died of the mosquito bite. So the following year would only fuel speculation. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, who had x-rayed Tutankhamun's body, died of mysterious illness. H.E. Evelyn White was next. The young British archaeologist was one of the first to enter the tomb after Howard Carter. After writing, "I have succumbed to a curse," in his own blood, he hung himself. Sir Lee Stack, governor of Sudan, and also amongst the earliest visitors to the tomb. Later that year, he too met a violent end and was shot dead on the streets of Cairo by an assassin. The next year, one of the most peculiar stories surrounding the curse hit the newsstands. Howard Carter had given his close friend, Sir Bruce Ingham, a paperweight made from a mummified hand wearing a scarab bracelet. The dig has notable visitors from all around the world. Inscribed upon the bracelet were the words, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." Soon after, Ingham's house burnt down. When it was rebuilt, it flooded.
Wow, that sucks.
1926, so that's only 3 years span. George Benedict of the Louvre Museum died shortly after visiting the tomb. Another Egyptologist, Aaron Ember, also died that year in a curious fire at his home. Carter himself, the main archaeologist to excavate King Tut's tomb, was A.C. Mace. Mace spent years on the dig and co-authored the first book about the discovery with Carter. That's the one I just read. Complaining of weaknesses, he collapsed. He died shortly after, seemingly of arsenic poison, in the same hospital as Lord Carnarvon. In 1929...
How did he get arsenic poisoning? He just found a
back
bottle
then,
of
you could get arsenic poisoning pretty easy.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Wasn't it used in ailments?
I got a good story about
Go ahead.
this when you're ready.
Okay.
One of the books, when I was a kid, I loved this so much. I was so obsessed with this. And one of the books that I had read had, they try to come up with a theory of why all these things happen. And it was the mosquito that allegedly somehow the eggs of the mosquito had lived in the tomb, and then when they opened the tomb, they hatched, and they actually brought what's possibly either West Nile or some other virus that causes encephalitis.
Liza Minnelli went to King Tut's tomb.
There we go. But it's a
God.
theory that it was something that mosquitoes carried back in the day that came out and then started killing everybody and has since caused problems in society.
Well, wasn't West Nile virus, though, people caught blood poisoning from mosquitoes even before that? Because I remember reading about people traveling during the Renaissance period and during the medieval period, and they would go to some of these countries that had a lot of hot weather and that had a lot of mosquitoes, and they would get bitten and they would get really sick in their
They get
blood.
like malaria.
Malaria, yeah.
Well, mosquitoes are...
Yeah,
There's so many
I mean,
varieties of mosquitoes that, like even today they're talking about like the Zika virus and everything, that every mosquito has, some kind of form of, you get bitten. They said people die from mosquito bites every single day practically.
Yeah.
Because they do carry a lot of
Diseases, yeah.
diseases or whatever,
But then you think about it, these guys were for months digging and probably not cleaning their hands a lot. There weren't a lot of antibiotics or a lot of antiseptics back then. Not as we know it. And they were probably catching up. There was a lot of bacteria and probably a lot of mold and
who knows what was in the paint? There could have been.
Yeah, who knows?
You know, all sorts of toxic substances.
Right.
So there's more.
Okay.
Go on.
Yeah.
1929 saw two strange deaths. Howard Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, was present at the opening of the burial chamber in 1923. He was found in November smothered to death in his bed. The press blamed Westbury's suicide on the curse. A few months later, Bethel's father, Baron Westbury, jumped from the 7th floor flat in a delirium. The flat contained artifacts from the dig. Obtained by his late son, Westbury's suicide note read, "I really cannot stand any more horrors and hardly see what good I'm going to do here, so I'm making my exit." Finally, Lord Carnarvon's half-brother died from malaria pneumonia. Within 6 years of discovery, Carnarvon, both his half-brothers, Carter's chief archaeologist, his personal secretary, his father, the excavation radiologist, and at least a half a dozen other prominent individuals who visited the tomb were all dead. Carter examines the coffin. Did he unleash the force? Coincidences? Now, this is the interesting one. You should mention this, Verna, because
Yes.
this is the science of today. They
Okay.
actually had a couple in 1995 visit the
Okay.
tomb, and they have a very strict tour. You follow the path. You don't touch anything. You don't touch the walls, because if you touch the walls, your oils pulls the ink off the walls. And I think they're covered now.
Right.
But at that time, they still weren't. The woman, when she went in the tomb behind the tour guide, she actually said, she reached up and she touched the wall. And the tour guide said, "Don't touch that." And she said, I'm only touching it because my archaeologist teacher said if you ever get a chance to go inside that tomb, I want you to touch the paint and feel the texture. He said, don't touch it. So she pulled her hand back, but she achieved what she wanted to achieve. Turns out she got home. She got really sick. Problems with her lungs. She got really sick. They did scans. Turns out she had this unusual fungus in her lungs. Now, they're starting to realize now, when that tomb was opened, that paint kept that fungus alive. Because paint is natural. It's made of, plant.
Yeah,
right?
So her archaeologist teacher sent her to her death.
In a roundabout sort of way.
Bet that teacher regrets saying that.
Exactly. So all those people, think about it. Howard Carter went in, touched the walls. All the visitors touched the walls, picked things up. Now, they didn't take torches in when Howard Carter went in.
No.
They took electric light in so that they didn't damage anything.
Right.
In the 1800s, you barreled in with torches. Torches probably burned off a lot of that toxin.
Right.
Probably.
Before you
yeah.
even got into it, your torch was already torching the toxin.
Right.
But in Howard Carter, he only had the lamp. So the toxin was still around and alive.
Oh, what the hell?
And
It was the
years.
1920s. What did they know?
Exactly. But look how many people had to die. I mean,
Well.
now, was it the curse?
Back then, when they buried their dead, they would have their priests do all kinds of protective spells, all kinds of spells against anybody who would rob or would disturb them. And I know a lot of people don't believe in this stuff, but, magic can last through the centuries, and words can last. Feelings and emotions to go with magic can last through the centuries if you're powerful enough.
Yeah.
Ask anybody who practices ceremony or ritual magic and is the expert and knows that and knows this and is very careful with it. It can last
Spaces
for
collect
years.
energy.
Yeah.
They collect that energy.
Yeah, it can last for years. If you don't believe in it, you're probably thinking I'm talking nothing but a bunch of hooey. But those who really practice the real thing understand what I'm saying.
And the Egyptians knew a lot more than we do now.
Why are you looking at me?
We still...
Because you're looking at me. That's why.
She's hexing you. Didn't you see the look in her eyes?
I know. Jeez.
That was a
Because you're looking at
That
me.
was at least a 3-page hex in her eyes.
She looked
I
at me
just saw it.
like, knowing.
Because Linda was looking at me and I'm like, what? Oh, never mind.
Sisterly hexes.
I know.
Sisterly looks.
So, yeah, I mean, you think about everything the Egyptians, the mystery behind the Egyptians, the pyramids. Maybe their magic and their curses and hexes, maybe they meant business.
Of course they meant
Of course
business.
they meant business, yeah.
And you know what the crazy thing about some of this is? You got to wonder, I mean, we'll never know about the people who tomb raided these places. But I guess Howard Carter was always talking about there were so many tombs broken into in the Valley of the Kings through the 19th century
Right.
that all they left were the mummies and a few expensive items left over. They actually found when they were broken into, removed the mummy and the items, and would put that mummy in with another mummy. So they would be roommates. And it got to the point where there were 5 mummies in one tomb
Oh, yeah.
as
Absolutely.
roommates because their houses were ransacked.
Right.
So they would find a tomb and they're like, why are there 5 mummies in this tomb? Then they figured it out.
So also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't King Tut's tomb, they didn't find him at first.
No.
They found the faux burial room first, and it wasn't until later they actually found his mummy and his true treasures.
Right. They
Right,
found the
there's
annex.
always- there's
They found
always
the
a fake
annex
tomb.
first, which was the items.
Right.
Then they found another, they found the antechamber. Then they found the annex.
Right.
And then they found the burial chamber.
Right.
And you know what's crazy? I just saw this recently. On the other side of the wall of the burial chamber where he was, they now did the sonar scans. They think there's another doorway to another chamber, but it's
Wow.
behind the gigantic mural wall. So they would have to destroy the wall by cutting into it in order to find out if this is even there. And it may not even be there 100%.
Oh, they should do it.
I think they should do
I
it
think
too.
they
They
should
should do
too.
it, but I don't
Just be
think
carefully cut
They
it.
should be very careful, though.
it's really hard these days since the Egyptian government is very, very particular.
Yeah, they're protecting it
Well,
now.
even like I forgot, and I wish I can remember his name. I can never pronounce it. He is the head of the Egyptology department, Mr.
I know what you're talking
Professor
about.
Haywa.
He's very, very good.
He's
He's on every special I ever watch about
Yeah, he's
Egypt.
famous. Well, he's
Yeah.
their top man, and now they're finding more tombs than ever. Now in the Valley of the Kings, they keep digging and they're finding more tombs and more tombs. Now what they're doing is when they find a tomb, Verna's giving me that look.
Don't look at
When
her while
they
she's
when
talking.
they when they find the tomb and everything, and they find the findings, they're not allowed to touch anything. They're not allowed to touch the mummies. They're not allowed to touch the artifacts. They're allowed to number the artifacts and put it there, take pictures, but they're not allowed to take it out of the tombs anymore. The Egyptian government totally
I'm
forbids it.
glad.
yeah, I'm
which
glad
is
It's a
good
shame
in a
they're
lot of
about 200
ways.
years too late.
Well, you know, the British took so much of their treasures.
British, the French, the Italians,
you
you
name
name
it,
it, the
everybody.
whole planet came in and just it was like
They
flies
just
on
helped
shit.
themselves. Yeah.
They just ransacked. You know what's
Yeah.
sad though is the Egyptians were so poor. You know what they would use the buildings for? The walls of the tombs and the temples outside.
What?
Ramses' giant temple. You know what they were using the walls for? To
What?
build their houses. They
Wow.
were repurposing them because they
It's
were
materials
practical.
that were abandoned for years.
It is. They were repurposing them.
Hey,
They-
this
to
is a
them-
nice view. I think I'll take
to
this
them, this is an old stone wall. I can reuse
absolutely,
this.
yeah.
To everyone else, it's like, my God, that's an ancient Egyptian artifact. No, to them, it's house. It's living.
Yeah.
So
I'd
they
like
were.
my house to have
Totally
a 3,000-year-old mural.
I wish mine did too.
They
Can
figure
you
they're not going to
imagine?
use it. Why not us?
Exactly. So, I mean, you got to think of it from different perspectives. But
Right.
then again, there was tomb raiders. When they were still burying pharaohs, there was tomb raiders.
Oh yeah.
In fact, Tutankhamun had a tomb raider. There's a holes in the wall, and they say that it happened 3 months after he was buried.
I believe
So
it.
and they ransacked the place. But you know what was crazy is they behead them when they went back then when they found them.
Oh yeah.
They quickly put things what they thought they would go to clean up after they were done ransacking it. So they mainly took small items because they could only dig a small hole. So you weren't taking out the chariots, the sarcophagus, the alabaster, and the gold masks. You couldn't take that out. It's too big. So they
Right.
were pulling out the little statues, the scarabs, the small
Jewelry,
items,
yeah.
the jewelry that was gold. Problem is, half of the Egyptian stuff is gold, half of it's fake.
Right.
It's painted gold.
Right.
So that's why they said the big stuff's still there because they couldn't steal it.
Right.
And of course, it was on the open market. And did that have curses? I mean, those tombs all had warnings and symbols on them of curses.
Just don't get a mummy's hand with a scarab on it.
I know. Can you imagine? That's kind of icky, I thought.
Oh, I
No,
think it's
speaking
cool.
of-
I would
speaking of
love
Egyptian-
to have one of those.
Speaking of Egyptian artifacts, I'm sorry, David, you were about to say something?
Yeah, you go first.
Well, I'm sure most people have seen the Egyptian artifacts at the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose. And I believe that when they first had those artifacts come to the United States, they came around the same period. And
Oh.
yeah, they came from around the same period.
See, I never
And
saw any of that.
And
Oh, we
that's
gotta take you.
that is the largest, I think, the largest display of Egyptian artifacts in the U.S. is at the Rosicrucian Museum.
I think you're actually right.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
believe
you are.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been seeing those artifacts since I was a child, and I was just, even as a child, I was amazed on how they got so many, and how did they manage to bring them here? I mean, it was just
They got
it's-
mummies in there too.
They do. They have mummies. It's amazing that you can
They got a tomb
really
in there.
see it
And the Rosicrucian Museum is in San Jose, California.
in San Jose, California. Yeah, and it's
We'll have
the
to check
main.
that out.
Yeah, it's the and it's the museum and also the main Rosicrucian Lodge there. The Rosicrucian movement.
The museum-
The museum is next to the place where they hold their classes. Yeah,
The Rosicrucian, you feel like you're in Egypt.
you do. It's
Uh,
built like a real temple. It's
Only
beautiful.
cheaper.
Yeah, it looks like Charlton Heston would come out
It
And
does.
It has
It really
hippopotamus
does.
fountains
With a gun.
and everything. You got to see
It's
it. It is
gorgeous.
so
Sure.
There's a
That's
planetarium there, and now they have the alchemy.
And it's really cool.
And now they have the alchemy museum, which is amazing. Everybody, you have to check it out. It's amazing. It's wonderful. You got to go.
Now, you saw the stuff at the Met when we lived in New York.
Yes.
So they have that giant Nubian temple. It's only one half of the Nubian gateway.
Right.
That was discovered by that Italian in the 19th century that I was talking
Which
about.
Italian?
Him and
I
his
don't
wife.
think I realized that was authentic.
It is. What's really cool though is the graffiti. 1875.
Oh, that's right. I do
Carl
remember that.
was
I do
here.
remember that.
You're like, even the graffiti's historic.
Yeah, the graffiti was fascinating.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did learn is next 2018, next year, every single King Tut, all 5,000 pieces, will be in the Egyptian Museum, in one place.
How
in
did
the
they do
Egyptian
that?
Museum.
They took this whole time doing it.
In Egypt?
In Egypt, in Cairo. It's the only place you can see all 5,000 pieces in one place.
On my
Permanently.
bucket list.
That's,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
when it's
I wanna
opening.
go.
It's
too.
on my bucket list. Wow, totally.
And they actually they recreated, this was really cool. They rebuilt the tomb exactly how it was. And
Wow.
they put
That must have been.
they
That must
put a
be
lot
trippy.
of items back where they were so you can walk through the tomb.
Wow.
See the mummy. They're actually going to have him there. Right now, he's actually in his tomb. He's back in his tomb still.
Well, I've seen his sarcophagus.
But I don't know if they're going to put him in the museum as well or leave him where. I think they should leave him where he's.
I
where
think
he's
she'll
at.
leave him where he's at.
But that way you can actually see how it looked.
Yeah.
Which I
Wow.
thought
I
was
remember
cool.
when I saw the Teen Tut collection that they actually had his sarcophagus to show off, and
And the
I
head-
had seen
and the
the real
gold
thing,
and
the
everything.
whole thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't fake. I think it was real, and it was just absolutely stunning and beautiful, and I was just like totally in heaven.
Yeah, rub it in.
I know.
The last time they did a showing in San Francisco at the Legion of Honor, I think it was.
It was
it was all
it was in
knockoff
19. Yeah, that was knockoff.
Really?
The one they showed at the Yale
Replicas?
Museum
It was
in-
replicas and like an alternate mummy. And
Right.
Show me that.
Yeah.
But hey, do you guys remember when somebody tried to sell an Egyptian mummy on eBay?
Oh.
Yeah, it's
When
like
was
the
that?
late '90s, and I think I'm going from very foggy memory, but I seem to remember that somebody protested it from the Egyptian government, and the auction was taken down.
So we went from selling mummies to selling your soul on eBay, and your dirty underwear. I guess was the last
Oh,
one.
don't
right?
forget, you can sell one of those little Jewish boxes too, the haunted wine bar.
What was it a
Zach
Quebec,
Bagans.
Quebec box?
The Dubai
Dubak box. Dubak.
box.
It's a Jewish wine cabinet.
Yeah.
It's ritual.
Malicious spirits.
Yeah,
in
malicious
there.
spirits. All right, we're back to the Curse of King Tut. And we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Sorry.
Good one. Good pun.
Sorry, got to have one a night. There you go, folks. There was that one for tonight.
Elvis has left
And
the
I know
building.
Verna wanted to retouch on something, correct?
Right. We were discussing what I said about people who practice serious ritual magic. What I was saying was that if you say words and you focus thoughts and you put energy into something very strongly, and you do it as a group, which I'm sure the Egyptian priests did, that energy can last for centuries. The emotions and focus can go that, and the focus into all of that can be that strong. It can last. Anybody who's ever studied this any kind of magical practice seriously, and from a spiritual tradition that they practice, understands that. That's why it's something that's not easy, and that's very takes a lot of energy and a lot of work and a lot of study.
Yeah, and if you don't really understand that aspect of it, think of a relative's favorite possession who's gone.
Right.
And how when you pick up that possession, you get the sense of that relative or something. It's the same concept.
It's the same concept.
Items
Yeah.
collect energy, and like you said, that's like a powerhouse happening with the rituals that went into the burial ceremonies.
Right, exactly.
I think that's where a lot of ghost hunters mistake is being a haunted item. It's not necessarily haunted. It just has a lot of energy still attached to it.
Yeah.
Because that person possessed it.
When I pick up my mother's vintage jewelry, especially the ones she wore often, I still feel her energy. I feel her favorite pieces.
You know, when I was at your house Friday night and I put on her gown and her jewelry, I totally felt the same thing.
Of course he did.
And he looked really bad.
And Tony, you looked great in it.
Didn't
And that will be on
I
the
thought,
YouTube
wow.
channel,
It was
right?
smart and cute, and it was fierce.
And all the lipsticks that he tried on his lips at your collection,
I have
Brenda,
enough of
was just
that.
And neither did
horrendous.
Tommy.
A
The cat
bald-headed
I caught him
man
getting
with
into my
jewelry and
makeup,
red
yeah.
I
lips.
put on such
I
a
don't
show
know.
for your cats in the hallway.
My cats were staring at him a lot.
And the portal. Don't
portal.
forget the
It
portal.
was in the portal. I
It
was
was
doing
in
the
the portal.
catwalk with
Hey,
the
he's
cats.
not making fun of my portal anymore. He witnessed it.
I did.
Yeah.
So, what was I going to say? I don't remember. Oh,
We're going
the
back
curse.
to the curse.
Now I
King
want to know.
Tut.
I want to know how. If you now, let's go down each of you. Do you believe any part of the curse at all? Verna, you go first.
A little bit. Yeah.
Like, what is a little bit? Scale of 1 to 10. How much faith?
What
do
I
you put
mean
in the
by a
curse?
little bit is that if these Egyptian priests actually did some protective magic and it got broken into, I think the magic can manifest itself in many ways. It just comes out in different forms in different ways, and it's a combination of that and people not protecting themselves or not having enough protection from the elements and being exposed to all these toxins.
Yeah, protection also being knowledge and physical protection.
Right,
Now,
exactly.
what's interesting though is King Tut didn't have a warning in his tomb. His tomb actually was meant for somebody else, and he was quickly buried in it.
Right.
In
Yeah.
fact, they think Nefertiti might be on the other side of that wall I was talking about.
That's what they're thinking
Oh, that
about.
would
That
be awesome.
Nefertiti, because Nefertiti was his mother.
Exactly. I think she's on the other side. So, I don't know. Because it didn't have a curse, do you think that might have anything to do with the fact that there were so many deaths? Or do you think it's like you said, it's just a matter of a combination?
It's a matter of a combination. I mean, there's also the gods that he worshipped that they prayed to, and they did protective magic. And then, of course, these people obviously didn't follow or believe it, and they didn't really protect themselves. So they were exposed physically, and also I think possibly the energy from the tomb could have affected them. Yeah.
Okay. Linda?
I agree with her. I think it's scientific. I think it's metaphysics. You know, that is part of the formulate of what happened to these people.
But isn't that kind of taking the easy way out, saying it's science and it's magic?
And also is due to a lot of different personalities of these people. You know, that what they were struggling through in their lives and everything, and things happened to them tragically. I don't know. You know, it could be a combination of everything. You know, so I kind of agree with my sister, and you know, yeah.
Okay. David?
So yeah, I like.
You can pull your mic down. You're a voiceover.
going
You're a
to.
voiceover thespian.
Yes,
You
but I've
went
been
to school for
using the
this.
mic away from me, so I didn't have to worry about it.
All right.
But I like what both of them are saying, and I agree on a lot of points. What I might add as a consideration is, I think a lot of what the parties that went to infiltrate the tomb brought was the energy that powers the curse. When you open a door to something that has not been opened for many years, there's an excitement in you. There's this, and they all were looking for this other world that had been locked away for thousands of years, and that kind of energy brings things to life.
It almost reminds me of
Good
the way
point.
you're putting it is almost like voodoo. So the person who's giving the voodoo spell and the person who receives it, the person receiving it also has to believe in it, as
Right.
well as the person giving it. So that's almost kind of leans towards that theory.
So yeah,
where
so-
the curse is there, but also if you're opening these tombs and believing this, you're bringing it to life too.
Right.
And
that's part of
differ a little
metaphysics.
bit. I differ a little bit on that. I don't believe that the person has to believe in it in order for it to work.
No, I'm
Yeah,
just,
I-
I'm
no,
just
no, no,
making
no,
a
no,
saying.
no,
Okay, I'm just
I
saying
know what you
I
mean.
don't, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, I know what you
Yeah.
mean, because you don't have to believe in it, but if you're kind of unaware, you're probably being more affected by it than you realize.
More the
Right. Oh, okay.
mysticism of it
Good-
all,
good-
I
good
think.
way. Good
Yeah.
way of
That's
putting
what I'm
it,
saying.
yeah.
It's all the metaphysics part of it. But a lot of these people who are scientists and archaeologists are pretty much atheists. So they really don't believe in God. You know, most of them didn't believe in God. They were not very religious people.
Yeah.
You know, and they, and being English,
Church of England.
yes.
Yeah.
You know, and being English, and no disrespect or anything, it's just that, you know, at that time they thought they were a little more superior than everybody. They were just a little, you know, who they are and everything. So they went there with a complete mindset that we're going into an ancient tomb that is, what they're thinking is dollar signs and how rich and how famous these people are going to be. They didn't think about curses or they're going
Yeah.
to get sick.
just
or,
looked at the physical
or,
and scientific
or the
side.
fungus they were going to inhale and everything, because, you know, at that time they really knew very little. I mean, penicillin wasn't even invented yet. so
That's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my theory,
Oh, I just
Oh,
want to
yeah,
add
you're
one more
in
thing.
Tony's
then we'll
theory.
go there.
Let's go to Tony's
so,
theory.
So
Gotta hurry.
take all that and now add the noble Englishman who's never stepped foot outside of the wet, dreary weather of England, suddenly living in a desert for months at a time,
Right.
And being very accident prone, for not used to any of the tools or implementations that are out there. I mean, you got to mix that in
now
too.
look at this though. The man who handled everything and was in there the longest, Howard Carter, he lived to be 81 years old and died of natural causes.
He did it.
He was able to withstand it, and it didn't affect him. It's a good thing.
Right. Now my theory
Yeah.
is I believe now the molds, I believe the conditions. You got to remember, back in 1923 might be different than 1995.
Right.
There could have been a lot more different toxins involved. There could have been stale air. There could have been all kinds of things that were released.
There could have been
Heat-
radioactivity.
And we got heat stroke. We got malaria. This is Egypt, folks. Mm-hmm. I mean, the fact that you can tie anything to a curse. Really, if you really try hard enough, you could make your own little trail. I mean, look at the curse of the Little Rascals. Look at the curse of Hold Your
Little
Hands.
Rascals.
But you know, I
You know
mean,
what
but
I'm- you know
you
what I
know, but these days now, that because of modern medicine and everything, that we most countries, if you do go into that, do require certain kind of shots. That when you enter a country,
Yeah, oh,
because
yeah.
of
For that
bacteria and
reason.
stuff,
Yeah.
for that
Yeah,
reason.
you can
So
eliminate all the-
at the time,
yeah.
there wasn't like that, but now there is.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Well, we got to go. We got to wrap it up. It's
Yeah, we gotta wrap it up.
another week into the Ecto Portal with the Curse of King Tut. Hopefully, we've enlightened your already enthusiastic approach to Egyptology and archaeology and King Tut in general.
Gave you something to think about.
Exactly. So you can go get your play set now and go bury your tomb in the backyard and bury your mummy.
Or
And
make
you
a
can-
trip to the Rosicrucian.
or
Oh
make a
yeah,
trip, yep.
go to the
That
Go and
is
check out
on
the
my
guys.
book to do.
Yeah, I want to do
All
that
right,
too.
I
I'm
think that
excited.
I see road trip for all of
Yeah,
us.
woo.
Oh, that would be great.
So, yeah, hopefully you guys got a little bit out of that. And we will see you next week.
We'll see you next
when
week.
we're going to have David back on for Real Vampires. Is that what we're going to call it?
I guess you could call it that.
Oh,
That's what
boy.
we're going to talk about.
We're gonna
Boy, we're gonna
That'll
have
be the
fun,
subject.
David.
This will
Oh,
be
yes,
this
we
will be
are.
fun. This will
Oh,
be
just
interesting.
wait.
All
Just
right.
wait.
So see you next week, folks.
See
for
you
Real
next week.
Vampires. Bye.